attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. It's Tom Bellis from Concrete Ontario. It's just now 10 o'clock. We're just going to give it another minute or two to allow some of the last few participants to dial in. So we will start up the presentation in about a minute or so. So hang tight. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Tom Bellis, Director of Marketing at Concrete Ontario. I'd just like to welcome everyone to this session of the Concrete Ontario webinar series. Before we get started, I'd just like to give recognition to Concrete Ontario's corporate sponsors, London Machinery Inc. and Dufferin Aggregates. We thank them for being a corporate sponsor for this fiscal year for the association. The agenda for today, welcome, which we've just done, as well as our Competition Act statement, which we need to read with every meeting that we do with our members. I'm going to quickly go over the webinar protocol if it's the first time on your webinar, so you're aware of how things are set up. I introduce the presenters, and then we will go into their presentation on workforce management and construction. And then we will open up the floor, if time permitting, for questions. And then there's a couple of housekeeping items with Concrete Ontario announcements. Competition Act statement. As participants in this meeting, we must be mindful of the constraints of the Competition Act. There shall be no discussion of agreements or actions that may restrain competition. This prohibition includes the exchange of information concerning individual company prices, cost margins, sales and operating plans, rates, market practices, claim settlement practices, or any other competitive aspect of a company's operation. Each participant is obligated to speak up immediately for the purpose of preventing any discussions falling outside these bounds. The webinar protocol, just so everyone online is aware, once you log in, all lines are automatically muted. If you do have a question during the call, there is a question dialog box in your GoToWebinar control panel. We ask you to use that to type your question, and like I said, we will address them at the end of the webinar. Or alternatively, you can email me directly, tbellis@concreteontario.org, and we'll send follow-up answers after the webinar from our presenters to you. Presenting today, we have Design Group Staffing. Design Group Staffing provides recruiting solutions for engineering, technical, and technical sales roles in construction, EPCM, manufacturing, mining, oil, gas, renewable and alternative energy, and architecture and design across Canada. Today we have with us in the office Guy Christensen, who is the Vice President and General Manager, Jamie Gargi, who is a branch manager, as well as Dana Yamada, who is a business development manager. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie, who will start off the webinar presentation.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jamie Dargy. I'm the branch manager for our Oakville branch. We look after construction, engineering, heavy industry and manufacturing for Toronto and the GTA. I moved here a couple of years ago from Australia, and specifically I have 2 decades experience within construction and engineering. My part of the presentation is to give you a few key indicators and current market trends on the basic insight into the candidate experience. So firstly, market trends. Somebody's playing with my mouse. Here we go. The barometer for any economy tends to be its construction industry. So here's a bit of a snapshot of where we're at currently. Canada's economy is quite stable. Especially compared with other Western nations, construction is a $280 billion industry in Canada that represents nearly 10% of our country's economy. Over the next year, most forecasts have predicted that the economy will be flat, but at best, Ontario has exceeded expectation by about a percentage point ahead of the curve. The total output of the economy in February was about the same as the month before. We're on track for over 1.7 trillion on an annualized basis. While flat on a monthly basis, Canada's economy was actually 2.5% bigger in February as it was the same time last year. Within construction, this typically falls into 4 categories: new home building and renovation, heavy industrial, mainstream ICI, and civil engineering. The job market. A flat showing follows several months of strong growth, and as such could be a sign that the Bank of Canada will be in no rush to raise interest rates, so economists say. Canada's job market ended 2016 on a bit of a high. We added more than 200,000 jobs from August onwards. There were more than 50,000 new jobs in December alone, according to Statistics Canada. One important point to note here is there were more part-time jobs created in 2016 than full-time ones. These are last year's stats, so a little dated now, but still pretty relevant. It all points to an increase in new jobs being created. So what does this mean to the workforce? There's a few things to note here. First being an ageing workforce. Here in Ontario, we have some major long-term projects within infrastructure, transportation and utilities that are creating a decade's worth of work for Ontario's construction workforce. Whilst these projects will sustain employment over the next 10 years, we'll have an impending wave of baby boomer retirements on the horizon, which become the bigger market challenge for the industry. According to the latest labour market forecast released today by BuildForce Canada, it predicts Ontario's losing as many as 86,000 workers this decade to retirement. This obviously represents a huge loss of skill and experience. So we obviously need a plan B to sustain the workforce. And companies may want to consider their employer branding, and in particular their attractiveness to bring in more diversified workforce that consists of a blend of youth, females, and Indigenous people, as well as workers from outside the province or the country. Companies may want to grow their social media presence on platforms like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Pinterest, so they're getting the name out there with Gen Y and millennials to attract a new youthful talent and promoting the industry's long-term career potential. Upskilling will be part of the recruitment and retaining talent for the long term and enticing the next crop of skilled labour. This is a big consideration when looking at the labour demands for the province and how this will intensify for current and planned infrastructure and major engineering needs. This is a salient point considering construction employment will be at near record levels over the next decade for Toronto and the GTA, and the workforce will have effectively doubled in size in Ontario's construction sector. The current labour market for construction is pretty solid, with federal infrastructure investment at $10 billion a year for each of the next 2 fiscal years and increasing the base infrastructure spend each year for a decade. That translates to an increase in $9.5 billion annually, bringing the federal infrastructure investment from about $65 billion to nearly $125 billion. We have a booming residential market with no signs of abating, with low and medium-rise homes being built at a rate that's never been seen before. We also have a huge condominium projects that are being built downtown and the surrounding conurbations, with Toronto sitting second in North America for tall building projects. The unemployment rate still sits at approximately 6.4% in Ontario, which is slightly higher than expected, but not too much higher than the 5%, which is considered healthy in most first world countries. In terms of the national average, this is slightly lower than Canadian unemployment rate, which sits at 6.7%. Locally, Guelph has the lowest unemployment rate at 4.3%. The north of the city is worst affected, with Barrie leading the way at 8.5%. So the typical corridor of construction company and aggregate companies that fall directly in the lowest unemployment rate are basically in this area, making it more difficult to attract actively looking talent. Typical attrition and turnover rates seem to sit at around 15%. In a market that employs over 500,000 in this state, that means there's at least 75,000 people leaving jobs in the next year alone. That potentially will need replacing, and without factoring in any growth whatsoever. In addition to this, start adding the 86,000 people that are retiring from the construction industry over the next 10 years, and you have a rather large hole. It equates to approximately 16% of the entire market that will be turning over year on year, every year for an industry that's in growth phase. So the candidate marketplace. Now for the good news. The typical role types we've recruited for include managers, supervisors, engineers and technical trades for construction companies and manufacturing organisations and aligned businesses. We have provided services in these areas for 2 decades locally and 40 years nationwide. So we have a proven track record and qualified candidates that are ready to go. That's the pitch over. So how do we go about building our talent pools in DG? Firstly, candidate tracking. We utilise our database and also LinkedIn recruiter accounts to track and source new candidates and regenerate old ones. We maintain communication throughout their job search and even when they secure employment, albeit elsewhere. The first 3 months are pivotal. We call each person first day, first week, first month, and after a 3-month probation period. Reference checking. We always reference check candidates to ensure quality and underpin our commitment to business ethics. But this also gives you the opportunity to find out how best to manage the individual, giving you the opportunity to lessen your fallout rate. Referrals, an age-old adage, quality refers quality. We always ask for referrals from our best candidates and build a passive database of excellent people that you can then revisit for future reference when you have a grade A opportunity to turn them from passive to active. Branding. Continue to keep our name out in the media, especially with the likes of LinkedIn and Facebook, and most importantly, keep the website up to date. Recruitment companies ensure that their blogs and news pages are updated and current, otherwise it can send out the wrong message from a corporate perspective. We sing from the rooftops about new projects, promotions internally, any other social or corporate projects that you may be running in the community. Project tracking. Build a database to get ahead of the game and track major projects, including size of projects, start date, critical path, key personnel and structure. So you can keep a finger on the pulse on who's doing what in the market and look at the potential of what needs to be in the organisations may be. Spotting the gaps. Do you have seasonal trends, or do you need to ramp up for a particular project? Are you light in terms of middle management or somewhere else in the firm? Therefore, need to conduct a talent mapping exercise to identify future leaders or change ambassadors. Be proactive and prepared to stay ahead of the game by having a tangible succession plan. Advertising. It's always important to write a good advert and give specifics about the role, but companies need to think about their value proposition and why a candidate should actually want to work for you. This goes back to employer branding. But when you read the advert, ask yourself, would I want to apply for this role? Does it sound like a great opportunity and an awesome company to work for? All of the above amounts to what we call the candidate experience. We haven't covered my apologies. All of the above amounts to what we call the candidate identification. We haven't covered the candidate experience. From that, I mean the moment you identify a potential applicant, or they read your job posting through the interview process and the onboarding of that person. They'll be telling their peers and former colleagues about their experience with their new employer and how great you are, or how they made an awful mistake. You may not be a fan of LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, but I promise you your new hires will be, and their experience, good or bad, will be out there in social media in no time at all. So in summary, we have a healthy, stable economy for the long term, and an economy that's the envy of most in the G20 community. We have an aging workforce with low unemployment rates that presents a risk to companies in terms of near future skill shortages. We have strong residential sectors, and major infrastructure is booming and will be for some time, so competition for talent is extreme. Candidate diversification, attraction and retention are key to success, with an emphasis on company branding to bring in the best possible people and instilling corporate culture to keep them. Finally, talent mapping for the future is needed for succession plans to overcome any gaps by being prepared. Thank you very much. I'll hand you over to Dana Yamada. Oh, my apologies, Guy Christian.
Good morning. My name's Guy Christian. I'm a Vice President with Design Group, overseeing Design Group Oakville and Design Group London, Ontario. And I'm handing over the branch management of those offices to Jamie, who you just heard from, as I will be leaving the workforce myself at the end of June. Jamie mentioned what I want to talk about is our temporary employees today and our contract availability. We as an organization do permanent hire for your core group, but within the realms of what Jamie mentioned just now about the aging workforce, one of the areas that we're directing ourselves is attracting those people back into the workforce on occasion, from the standpoint that they are walking away with 20, 30, 40, and in some instances 50 years or more of skill set, and we can't afford to lose that. So therefore, one of the areas, as I've mentioned, that we are concentrating on is keep making contact with these people, seeing their interest in the possibility of returning to the workforce on a project hire basis or on a contractual basis. So it enables you the flexibility and them as well, the flexibility of working for a few months at a time, a few weeks at a time, possibly even longer. Many have realized that having entered the age of what's a weekend, are saying to themselves that they would like to be involved again in the workforce, and therefore we are promoting them to our clients as either being able to satisfy immediate needs with their skill set, and or as bench warmers with the younger engineers and the younger talented professionals that you have on your team, that these people with their skill sets can provide guidance, support, and training. So project hires, contract hires is a win-win for both parties. You, on occasion, no doubt, apart from your core group people, have situations where you require somebody and their skill set, or a group of people for that matter, for the period of the project only, not having any work beyond that. at that moment in time. So therefore, we can afford the opportunity for these folks to come and support you, as mentioned, for several months, several weeks, etc. We or our fellow organizations in this arena become the employer of note. So you have no obligation with respect to severance pay, compensation, benefits, vacation time, sick time, etc. That all gets taken care of by ourselves. And in fact, you just have one invoice for a charge rate, which is inclusive of all those burdens and overheads. So therefore, you can cut down indeed on your accounting group, for example, in so much that you can have 5 people, 10 people, 100 people, and it will be one invoice, one check. So the client pays for the hours that is worked by these temporary employees, the hours worked only. So if he or she does a 10-hour week or a 20-hour week, those are only the hours you pay for. As mentioned, you're not obliged to get into the sickness or the vacation, and nor are you entertaining getting into severance issues. So it's a very flexible arrangement. We are what we consider in the industry to be your flexible staffing solution. When you desperately need this skill set, we can relatively, in most instances, turn on a dime, having already interviewed and qualified people that we are able to put forward to you, and therefore alleviate you of the ramp up time to find these folks. With respect to payrolling, for example, you may already know of people, maybe they're former employees, and you would like to bring them back on a temporary basis, then you can do so through ourselves on a payroll basis. And again, just pay for the hours worked, etc. You may be experiencing a hiring freeze, in which case, as much as you need a particular skill set or a group of skill sets, head office is saying that we have a hiring freeze, but you need to get that project out. From the standpoint of a hiring freeze applying to the core group staff, you can, on many occasions, as we find with many of our clients, employ those people on a contractual basis, and at a later date, if you lift your hiring freeze, then you can bring those people on or retain them, as I say, on a project hire basis. This system can also be worked for qualification of your candidates. You may have met with people who impress you. Some people are professional interviewers, can perform exceedingly well at an interview, and then a few weeks later, after you've onboarded them, for whatever reason, are not a cultural fit, are not a technical skill set fit, etc., etc. So again, taking them on a payroll basis enables you a probationary period for both parties to get to know each other, and hence retaining that flexibility. So all in all, we, as well as some of our competitors, I have to acknowledge, provide this service. We consider ourselves, having been in the business since 1976, and are nationwide, to be well qualified to service you, and possibly on occasions your clients, in so much you may be called upon to find a person. We can find that person for you. You can pass that person on, and therefore the cost of that person becomes a pass-through to you. So all in all, we feel that we offer you a very flexible service, a very supportive service, and our understanding of our people is second to none. Should you have any questions on this, we do have a Q&A at the end of this presentation. And in the meantime, obviously, my and Jamie and Dana's contact information will be available through Tom Billis. Thank you very much for your time.
Hi, I'm Dana Yamada. I'm the Business Development Manager for Design Group for Ontario. Good morning. Health and safety, very, very critical to your organizations and the running of your business, and equally critical to our business. What must be in place for your temporary workforce, whether it's hired by a third-party provider or you're hiring directly? DGSI has 2 dedicated full-time trained employees whose primary responsibility and focus is on maintaining safety. Through our National Safety Program, which is audited annually, and through the hazard and risk assessment programs completed on-site at the work sites prior to the contractors beginning their assignments. The contractors, I'd like to make 2 distinctions. There are independent workers or contractors who have his or her own business and would be incorporated or is a sole proprietor. There's also an employee or temporary worker, as you may have heard, is hired by a company to perform a specific work at the direction of the employer. The employer could be a staffing agency or it could be you. Specifically for our Talent Core division, we do have worksite reviews, which tend to be higher in risk. The process is extremely thorough. More details are now required on the specific job orders, and those job orders will also be known as an assignment or a scope of work, statement of work. That outlines the location of the work site, proximity to medical resources, and job tasks that the contractor will be performing. There also should be an orientation process for the contractors. That orientation process is conducted by DGSI. That orientation process is also provided by you, the client. The disability management program that includes fit to work assessments is also done and is required. And the modified work program to assist workers should they be injured on the job is also required. And expertise surrounding the various provincial workers' insurance boards. A job hazard analysis program which uses a numeric risk system to determine which tasks that worker may complete while on the work site will also pose the largest risk to them. A violence and harassment prevention policy and procedure, internal and external procedures should also be in place, inclusive of tracking, reporting, and trending of all incidents, accidents, injuries, and illnesses. Who is responsible if an injury occurs? Should a contract worker, even if they are incorporated or limited, with their own workers' compensation, sustain an occupational injury, DGSI would manage the entire process. We do ask the client for assistance with providing their accident reports and possibly assisting with immediate transportation to medical facilities. If the contractor is incorporated or limited and carries his or her own WCB, the cost would be allocated to their company. Otherwise, any claim cost would be allocated to DGSI through our WCB account. We work closely with the clients, and in many cases, they will provide modified duties to the worker as well, with DGSI directly involved in the process. Telecommuting. This has been certainly a hot topic in today's workforce. Technology is certainly making it easier for employees to work at home and stay connected with the central office electronically by modem, computer, fax, or phone. Some employers like telework because it increases productivity, improves employee morale, and reduces absenteeism. Employees are equally attracted to the prospect. To them, it means an improved quality of life, increased autonomy, more time at home with family, far less commuting, and even the flexibility to live far from the office if they want to. And of course, this only pertains to specific roles in the organization. It's still very early in terms of the stages of evolution. However, there are certain concerns that are arising. Some organizations have studied the issue and discovered that teleworkers like the arrangement at first, but eventually find it isolating. Many are also becoming concerned with the health and safety aspects. If the company provides the equipment for the home office, it does have more control over the safety features of the equipment. Employers may have to check equipment periodically and keep it up to safety standards. If the company provides furniture for the home office, the employees should be allowed to test it before it is purchased to make sure it fits. If employees furnish their own home offices, there should be company standards and guidelines to ensure a proper selection. For example, a computer terminal should not be set up on a kitchen table because the surface is too high and does not allow for proper positioning of the wrists. Employees also have a responsibility to set up a safe place work at home. The employer should provide guidance in the form of ergonomics instruction and training on how to do that. Safety professionals tend to agree that the employer should be responsible for ensuring a safe working environment at the teleworker's home. This means that the teleworker should expect to sacrifice some privacy and allow the employer to inspect the home office as necessary. The legal gray area. Typically, health and safety legislation applies to all workers performing work for the employer, including teleworkers. But the issues of liability and compensation make telework a cloudy and very controversial issue. The general rule is that if a worker is injured by the employer's equipment or in the course of performing work for the employer may be held liable. But sometimes it may be up to the worker to prove to WCB that he or she is working when the injury or illness was incurred. To address issues that might not be fully covered in OSH legislation, the employer should have a written agreement with the teleworker that states, for example, who supplies the equipment, what types of access the employer and a Joint Health and Safety Committee have to the teleworker's house for safety inspections, who's responsible for placing, maintaining, and storing equipment, what part of the residence constitutes the official workplace, how to monitor the situation to ensure compliance with the law, and that teleworkers are required to report any accident or injury to the supervisor immediately, how accidents or injuries are to be investigated, and that employees who telework are subject to the same safety standards as other employees. And lastly, a very, very interesting discussion amongst several workplaces, and I'm sure you've been having the same discussions, is managing a multi-generational workplace. For the first time in history, there are 5 generations that will soon be working side by side. And as you've heard, as the baby boomers, the largest generation in history, retire, generations X, who were born in 1966 to 76, generations Y, born in 77 to 94, and Generation Z, born in 1995 to 2012, will now fill senior positions. And whether this multi-generational workplace feels happy and productive, or challenged and or stressful, is really up to you, the boss. Organizational careers don't look the way that they did before. It's more common to see someone younger managing someone older. This can at times lead to tension, and it's important as employers to be aware of the generational tension. It's important to build collaborative relationships. While it may seem daunting, someone older than you try taking a cue from the military. The U.S. Marine Corps routinely put 22-year-old lieutenants in charge of a 45-year-old sergeant. The mindset is to make the person your partner and involve them in everything you do. You're still the boss and the one making the decisions, but you should hear them out. A collaborative approach works well when managing workers. Secondly, study your employees. Just as you would research a new product or service, you should study the demographics of your current workforce and the projected demographics of your future workforce. Determine what he or she wants out of their jobs, as these things, these drivers, may vary from generation to generation. If your company conducts an annual survey of vision and values, you can add new questions to the mix, such as what are your preferred communication styles and what are your planned professional paths. Use this information to look critically at your human resources and your business strategies. Figure out what matters to different sets of employees and what you can also do to attract younger or conversely more experienced workers. Create opportunities for cross-generational mentoring. Pair younger workers with more seasoned executives to work on specific business objectives and usually involving technology. And the final principles to remember: do conduct regular human resource surveys to get a pulse on your employees' demographics and needs. It's a low-cost way to identify these needs. And don't act like a top-down manager. Don't assume you know how to motivate employees who are younger or older. If you don't have the expertise in-house, there are many resources available to help you get there. Thank you.
So we're now going to open up the floor for any questions. And as I mentioned, there is a question dialogue box provided in your GoToMeeting panel on the right-hand side. If you don't see it or if you don't have it, you can always click on the View menu and then choose Questions. If there will be any questions, I'll just do a couple of housekeeping items to give you guys some time to type. But alternatively, Dana's contact is there on the last slide, dyamada@dg.ca, or alternatively, her phone number, 905-287-2172. Or as well, like I said at the beginning of the presentation, you can email me directly, tbellis@concreteontario.org, and I can forward off the questions to DGSI. I'd like to thank DGSI for coming in today and taking the time to present on workforce management in construction. Again, I'll let you guys type away if there are any questions. Some housekeeping items. We do have the Concrete Ontario Truck Rodeo coming up on July the 9th at Miller Waste Systems in Pickering, Ontario. The registration for drivers is now live on the Concrete Ontario website. The web address is there at the bottom of your screen. We are looking forward to and limiting it to 40 drivers. And registration deadline is June 20th for the drivers. As well, if you're unaware, Concrete Ontario now does have a mailing list that is on our website. It's on every single page at the bottom of the page. It will give you access to any communications we have, such as this webinar, truck rodeo, any events and education sessions or news that goes out for the industry and our membership. So I encourage you that if you're not on there or if you don't have your employees on there, it's just basically your name and your email address, and we encourage you to go on there and sign up. Second last announcement, Concrete Ontario is proud to have the Camp Day Challenge back for this year, which is a online donation program where all proceeds go to Camp Uchigayas, which is a camp for children with cancer. If you have a company page from last year, it is online already. The web address is uch.org/concreteontario. You can go find your company name there and donate directly to your company page or donate directly to the Concrete Ontario webpage. If you're unfamiliar with how the Camp Day Challenge is set up, we recommend to all our members to raise $125 multiplied by the number of plants they operate for our active members, and our associate members is $125 per associate member. And finally, all our web recordings are now online at our website. You can see the web address on your screen. This webinar, thanks to DGSI for allowing us to record it, and we will post it on our website as well as put a PDF to the presentation. So if you haven't had the opportunity to jot down their contact information, you will get a notification if you are on our mailing list letting you know when that webinar is posted to our website. So again, I encourage you to sign up to the mailing list or peruse our website but it should be up in a day or two for you. I don't see any questions that have come in at this time. I'll give it another minute or so. Again, I'd like to thank DJSI, Guy, Jamie, and Dana for coming in. And again, as I mentioned, if you have any questions, you can direct them to me, tbellis@concreteontario.org, or if you've jotted down their information from the screen, you can email them directly. Well, I don't see anything that's come in, so I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to be part of the webinar today, and look forward to you participating in the next webinars and our events that I had mentioned on this webinar. Thank you, and have a good day.